Hey everyone, and welcome! Today we are diving headfirst into the wonderfully weird world of words and what happens when they go completely, hilariously wrong. Oh, you know the feeling. We have all been there. You're about to say something brilliant and then, bam, a total linguistic faceplant. But what if I told you that those little slips aren't just moments to be embarrassed about?
That's right. Your tongue is totally innocent here. It's just the messenger. Sometimes your brain's mailroom just sends out the wrong package, and when it does, it actually gives us these fascinating clues into its secret filing system. So today, we're going to be detectives and follow those clues.
Okay, our first clue is that super frustrating feeling when a word is right there. You can almost taste it, but you just can't grab it. What has a scientific name, and pretty much everyone on Earth has felt it.
So, the key thing to understand here is that this isn't a knowledge problem. You absolutely know the word. It's a retrieval problem. Think of it like this. The file is in the cabinet, but for some reason, your brain just can't pull open the drawer.
And you know what's really wild? It's what we do have in those moments. We basically have an outline of the word. You might think, I know it starts with a P. It's got like 3 syllables, it feels kind of long. This tells us something huge. Our brain stores words not just by their meaning, but by their sound and their structure. It's like you can read the label on the file, but you just can't open it up to see what's inside.
Okay, let's move on to our next clue. This is what happens when your brain tries to grab a word, misses, and instead grabs its hilarious-sounding neighbor. Get ready to meet the malapropism.
This fantastic word actually comes from a character in an old play, a Mrs. Malaprop, who was absolutely famous for these kinds of verbal mistakes. It's really the art of being almost right, but in a way that is so perfectly wrong.
And here is a perfect example. Mrs. Malaprop was trying to say someone was the pinnacle of politeness, the absolute top. Instead, her brain served up pineapple. You can kind of see why, right? Pinnacle, pineapple, they share some sounds, they have a similar rhythm. A brain in a hurry could easily grab the wrong one off the shelf. And the result? Pure comedy.
And this happens in real life all the time. In one study, when people were trying to remember the name of that navigational tool, a sextant, they kept coming up with all these other words: secant, sextet, sextant. Their brain just grabbed the nearest phonetic neighbor it could find.
And of course, pop culture gives us some of the best examples. The classic TV character Archie Bunker once said this, when what he really meant to say was monotony. It is a perfect malapropism. The word is just similar enough that you can see how the mistake happened, but the meaning is hilariously different.
All right, so far we've looked at mistakes with single words. But what happens when the brain is trying to build a whole sentence and the words themselves get all tangled up? Let's dive into slips of the tongue.
Now, the most famous of these are called spoonerisms. And yep, they're named after a real person, Reverend Spooner, who was a professor at Oxford and was legendary for getting his sounds all mixed up, usually with very funny results. He supposedly said this to a student who had, of course, missed all my history lectures. See what happened? The H and the M sounds just did a little switcheroo. It's such a simple swap, but it completely changes everything. And here's another one of his classics. Instead of being a loving shepherd, we get a shoving leopard. This is such a great example because it shows us that as your brain is planning out a sentence, all the sounds are lined up and ready to go, and every now and then, they just jump into the wrong spots. Now, spoonerisms are just one type of slip. But researchers have found that our brain's little planning errors usually fall into 3 very specific categories. You can think of them as the 3 main ways a message can get scrambled on its way to your mouth. Okay, let's break this down real quick. First up, we have perseveration. That's when a sound gets kind of stuck on repeat, so the F from favorite carries over and turns song into fong. Then you have anticipation, which is the exact opposite. A sound that's coming up later jumps the gun, like the N from numeral hopping back to turn Roman into nomen. And finally, you have exchange. And that's our classic spoonerism, where 2 sounds just swap places, turning feel better into Beal Fetter. So far, we've been focused entirely on the speaker's brain. But, communication is a two-way street. Sometimes a mistake doesn't happen at the mouth, it happens at the ear. This is just a brilliant example. It actually comes from a child who heard a church hymn, "Gladly the cross I'd bear." But instead of that solemn phrase, their brain heard something way funnier. A bear named Gladly who had some vision problems. The sounds are so close that their brain just defaulted to the more familiar and, frankly, more interesting image.
And here's the takeaway. Our brains hate being confused. When they get a fuzzy or unclear audio signal, they do their absolute best to match it to a word they already know. So, for a 5-year-old, the sounds in pitbull might get easily reinterpreted as the much more familiar word pimple. It's not bad hearing, it's just the brain doing a great job with some bad data.
All right, you've seen all the clues, you've learned the lingo, now it is time to test your detective skills. I'm going to give you 3 examples of speech goofs, figure out what kind of slip it is.
First up, this classic news blooper. The anchor meant to say setbacks, but something else slipped out. What kind of error do you think this is?
Okay, quiz number 2. This one's pretty common. You know what they mean, but they've grabbed a similar sounding word that's completely wrong. What do we call this?
And for our last one, a fantastic little tongue twister of a mistake. You're trying to say a long story short, but the sounds get all tangled up. What specific kind of slip is happening here? So how'd you do? Drop your answers for all 3 in the comments below. Okay, you're ready for the answers? For number 1, the news anchor, that was a classic malapropism, a total word substitution. Number 2, fire distinguisher, that was also a malapropism. And number 3, a long, shory stort, was a sound exchange, a good old spoonerism. Let us know how you did. So the next time your tongue gets tied, don't be embarrassed, just smile and appreciate that you just got a little peek into the amazing, complex, and sometimes hilarious machine that is your language brain. Thanks so much for watching.